Well, I can't sleep. It is about 5 a.m. Monday morning. I guess it's the 17th. Yeah. And I can't sleep anymore. Uh, Fell asleep a while back, several hours ago, but now I've been up for a while. So a lot of times when that happens, I make a video or put out a message. And sometimes when my mind is more clear, I can get back to sleep. So I got a few things to talk to y'all about for those that are interested in listening, because that's pretty much what you'll be doing if you want to check this out. You'll just be listening. I plan to do a live stream on my Substack channel, which I've shared the link to several times, and most likely once I get done with my live stream several hours from now, I'll probably post it to the post on this channel, so that way people can check it out. If you can't join in or don't want to join in the live stream, I understand. Everybody's very busy. People have work, they have ministry duties, they have kids, they have grandkids, they have life. I get it. I just have the time before I head into work to do it a lot of times. So that's what I plan to do. So I'm going to preface for those people that don't want to watch it or aren't able to watch the stream, because I have no idea how long it's going to be, because I got a few things to share, quite a bit to share actually, that I've been thinking about. That's been swimming through my head, the last few hours, and a little bit off and on through the weekend, and maybe even before that. I don't know. So, this is what is first and foremost on my mind regarding what's going on in the world. Just kind of paying attention to the geopolitical things, I guess, just without like being immersed in it. I mean, because you can really get immersed in this stuff. I mean, there's so much going on so fast. I mean, it's just like, you could be glued to a screen or to news or information or whatever, but honestly, who wants to live life like that? I mean, this weekend, just as an example, the weather was really nice, a little chillier, but nice. My wife and I were able to go for a hike Saturday morning, into the early, well, actually afternoon, you know, um, and it was comfortable, and we were able to hike and get some exercise that way, because I had to head into work later in the day, and but we took advantage of it. And yesterday was a nicer day too. It was a little chillier, but the sky was very blue, and as I'm listening to all of the what people refer to as bad news, whether it's on a personal or private level or a worldwide geopolitical level or whatever it is. It's just like, it just seems like it's all bad news or depressing or just not kind of what people were expecting. Maybe they were expecting a little better news, a little more hopeful news, and it just didn't happen this weekend. And that's unfortunate. That's sad. Um, Not really all that surprising, but just sad. And, you know, over the weekend, I usually kind of try to take a break and just kind of, you know, decompress from the week, whether it's, regarding work or, just life in general or what have you. People send me stuff throughout the week and even the weekend or whatever. And not to be rude, but I might ignore a lot of it because either it doesn't interest me, I'm just not intrigued by it or interested by it, or I just need to decompress, just take a break from everything. I'm sure other people probably feel the same way, but uh, you know, and then there are certain things that are sent to me. People text me or email me or whatever. I just shake my head at the evil, and just how demonic things have gotten and just how crazy. And it's just like, I don't even know how to respond to this. I mean, it's just blatant, satanic, demonic evil. I don't even know what to do. I don't even know how to respond to it. I'm just like, I'm dumbfounded. I was like, that's just straight up evil, for lack of a better term. It's just evil. So, but the thing that's been pressing on my mind and heart more than anything else is we're going to war. And like I said, I can't even say that we're going to declare war because technically, according to the Constitution, the rule of law, none of the stuff that really seems to matter anymore, Congress declares war. Well, it doesn't seem like that matters and hasn't mattered pretty much this whole year, maybe even before that, but definitely in 2025, since we're coming close to an end of this 2025 years, we know it on our calendar or whatever. I mean, some people say we have no idea what year we're in, and I'm not going to argue with that. Okay, I don't know. I just know on our calendar it says it's 2025, right? Well, it just seems like this with this year coming to an end now, this has been a year of lawlessness and chaos and what do they call it? WROL, without rule of law, no due process. The Constitution is kind of like basically something people wipe themselves with now. I mean, not to be crude, but they don't care. I mean, they, the regime, administration, whatever people want to call this thing, the government, whatever, they don't care. They just do whatever it is they want to do. I mean, it's amazing to me how one man, one dumpster fire of a regime can just do whatever they want. And people seem to be, for the most of the year, they seem to be fine with it. Like very little pushback until recently. At least that's what it appears to me. But I don't care about that stuff as much as I care about them taking us to war. Not declaring war through an act of Congress, just saying, you know, you're going to war whether you want to or not. And I've got a couple of videos that I'm going to share on the live stream later that I found very intriguing. One was from the PBS NewsHour, which usually I just don't pay that much attention to, but I found this interview very interesting. And another is from I guess he's retired lieutenant commander in the Navy named Bobby Jones from I think it's called Valor News Network. I'm not as sure about Valor Media Network, maybe something like that, where he talks about military news, and he talks about kind of like the interview with PBS NewsHour as well, the moral, legal, and ethical implications of going to war and what that's going to mean for your average American family, and more importantly, I think, for your children and your grandchildren of draft age. Now, years ago, when I started talking about that and mentioning it on the old YouTube channel, and I think it was even Marty Breeden, if people are familiar with him. He kind of mentioned it a little bit too, maybe in some Facebook posts, but this was a long time ago, 5, 7 years ago, whatever it's been. I hadn't talked about it very recently that I can recall, but I had mentioned it years ago. Well, at that time, talking about a draft almost seemed comical. It seemed like that's never going to happen again. Well, what do you think selective service is about, though? Where they tell young people that they used to have to go to the post office, fill out a postcard or whatever, and at the post office, uh, you know, I mean, things are different now. Of course, everything's done online or whatever the case may be. But years and years ago, before we had the internet or whatever, that's what you'd have to do. You'd go to the post office, you turn 18 or whatever as a male. Females didn't used to have to do it. I think they do now. I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't know for sure. But you males, when they turn 18, they register with Selective Service, you know. So what do you think all that is about? You know, and nobody ever thinks about it. They're like, oh, that's just one of the things you just do. It's just it's just the law, and it's just what you do. But it appears now it's not so comical. It's not so laughable. And I'll tell you why. Because I said I think a lot of things are just connected. You connect the dots. And when Keg's Breath, and I said, before, so I make fun of these people. I give them all nicknames. I don't care because I have respect for none of them. Absolutely none of them. I think they're all scum of the earth. This is my opinion, okay? People can agree, disagree, whatever. I got no respect for them, so I make fun of them. I mock them. I give them nicknames because when you do your research and you look into people's background, you delve into their background and what they're really about, and looking behind the mask, behind the facade, behind the charade, they're scum. There's like no socially redeeming value to these people whatsoever. So I mock them. I think they're a joke. I think I laugh in their face because I think that their father's the devil, and I don't consort with evil. I don't tolerate evil. I don't mess around with evil. I either, if it comes after me, I take it head on, or I ignore it. I just avoid it. I just stay away from evil people unless they come after me or my family or people I care about. Then I take it head on. Then I don't ignore it then, because now you're in my face. Now you're confronting me. Now we have a problem, But my attitude on it is, if you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, or vice versa, or whatever. I mean, we'll all be content. You leave me alone, I leave you alone. I leave you alone, you leave me alone. Everything's cool, right? But when you come after me, we have a problem. And okay, I'm sure you probably feel the same way in your life. Whether people think about it or not, or want to admit it, or what have you. But I remember not long ago where Keg's Breath, called all the generals and admirals in. And since that time, there's been quite a few resignations, people retiring or what have you. And Commander Bobby Jones, in the one video I'm going to share on, I plan to on the Substack or whatever, he mentions this, that a particular admiral that was in charge of Southern Command decided, I'm done, resigned his post. He was like, because I am not going to be involved in illegal activity or immoral or unethical activity regarding the rule of law and and war. Going to war without an actual declaration. That's what we do now. We just go to war. There's no declaration. We just attack whoever we want to attack. We just kill whoever we want to kill, and there doesn't seem to be much pushback from it, except on the military side. And that's what's interesting, because there are people in the military, either active duty or retired or whatever, that not so much your young enlisted, because they're just going to do whatever it is they're told to do for the most part. And I understand that mindset, especially from a kid, 18, 21-year-old young people, young men or women or what have you. They're scared, and they're also under the impression, at least I was when I served, and I'm sure other people probably felt the same way, that hopefully your command, your leadership has your best interests at heart. Hopefully that you can trust them, you can trust what they say, you can trust the orders, and you're not being asked to do anything that is unethical, immoral, illegal, that they're considered to be uh, considered to be what's the word I'm looking for? we'll just say, you know, authorized and legal orders. Okay, I can't really think of the term right now, but you hope that, you believe that. Okay, so your young enlisted probably aren't questioning too much, but your staff officers and your NCOs, non-commissioned officers, basically staff NCOs, your higher level non-commissioned officers, which are your enlisted, your higher level enlisted. They have questions. They're questioning their command. They're questioning the orders. They're questioning whether what they're doing is legal or ethical, and many of them question: Is this even moral? Is it even right? And they're having problems with taking some of these orders. So they're looking to outside sources for advice, legal, ethical, moral advice on, you know, should we be doing this? What, as far as like deployments in U.S. cities, which technically from a military standpoint hasn't happened, before now, since the 1992 Rodney King riots, as far as actual military on the streets to control chaos or to, break up riots or protests or what have you. So it's a very unusual thing. And some military members are actually questioning this. And, and they should. They should. Because they should think in such a way, with their morality, either the way they were raised, or if they are a born again believer in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and they use the Bible as their moral compass, you know, and how they respond and how they act in their everyday life. There should be a lot of questions, and there are. And so people are beginning to question the authority over them. Our active military or National Guard or whatever, maybe even reservists. They have questions, and so they're going to outside sources to look for the answers, which is very interesting to me, from someone that again was a military dependent for the majority of my life, you know, until I actually joined and served myself and so forth, and learned a lot, not only as a military dependent, but in the military serving myself, how things work. And, I know I've digressed from the selective service here for a while, but I'm going to get back to that, where, you kind of understand how it works. So the whole purpose of this is not only to preface what I plan to talk about in my live stream later, because I can't do it on this channel. It's just too much background interference and static or whatever. So I do live streams on the Substack for people who are interested. And I might just share a link, to the Substack if people want to check it out or whatever. I might do that again if people are interested. But the thing about the selective service here, I have a suggestion for people, and I made this suggestion before, years ago, like 5-7 years ago, whatever it's been. I don't know. It might be maybe even longer than that. Where, and I know it was even more recently, but I don't remember exactly when. That people have a serious talk, like I have, most recently with my son, but I've talked to both of my children about this before, and my wife as well, just recently over this weekend, where you might want to have a very serious talk with your draft age children or grandchildren, or people in your life that that are of that age group. And I've even talked to former co-workers, young people or whatever, that I've worked around or with or whatever. And, they look at you like you're nuts. It's like, come on, man. Who's this old man talking to me about or whatever? And they're not going to listen to your wisdom for the most part. or to your experiences, because they don't have the mindset, especially a young person of college age or just getting out of high school or whatever, unless they plan to join the military. And from what I understand, the latest reports are a lot of young people are. A lot of kids just getting out of high school are joining the military because they don't see any other options. They don't want to go to college, or it's too expensive, they can't afford it, whatever else. The job market is horrible. They can't find the work they want to find. Some people don't have the discipline, to learn a trade, to go to any kind of vocational school where they can't afford it, or whatever else. Whatever the reasons are, a lot of people are joining the military right out of high school now, which I think is exactly what they want, which is why Kegsbreath brought in the generals and admirals and saying, no more fat bodies, no more beardos, as he called them, no more this, no more that. If you can't handle it, get out, resign, retire, whatever else. And we're going to get rid of all of these people. We're going to have strict physical and hygiene standards and professional standards. And it all sounds really, really good on the surface. But it's really, I think, part of depopulating the military to bring in the ones that they want in, to get rid of the old and bring in the new. You know, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But back to the selective service thing, you might want to have a serious conversation with your young people in your life to inform them that there is a good possibility, depending upon how these military operations go, and we spread ourselves so thin throughout the world, that um, they're going to be drafted eventually. There's going to be some type of military draft. I don't know exactly when, and I don't know how much, but there's a good possibility of that, because they're kicking out the people that aren't cutting it now, or have medical disabilities, or some other things that I know about that other people won't know about, because of my own personal experience and things I dealt with. And I'll get into that in a few minutes, okay? And it's not a racist thing, it's a fact. And I'm going to get into it in a few minutes. But um, you might want to have a talk, at least plant the seed, saying, okay, this is what I did with my son. It's like, dude, you need to work on your cardio fitness, right? Because a lot of people, you know, if they're interested in their body and so forth, they go to the gym, they lift weights, and they get bulked up and they get built, but they do very little for their cardio fitness. By cardio, I mean, fast walks, jogging, uh, playing pickup sports or organized sports where they have to run up and down a court or skate up and down an ice rink or whatever it is, to build up their cardio fitness. Whatever the recreation activity is, to make sure that they are getting physically fit, because in the military you do a lot of running. You do a lot of cardio fitness, and a lot of young people, they don't want to do anything cardio related. So I suggested my son, he plays basketball with a friend of his or whatever. I said, just run the court, man. This is what I used to do, because I would play basketball on my command basketball team or whatever. Played a lot of basketball in high school and pick up games and whatever else. I said I would go to the court myself and I would just run the court back and forth, to build up my cardio fitness. Because if you're playing basketball, for instance, you're running a lot. You could run like 5 miles a game, depending upon how much you're playing. This is for young people, of course. But I said, yeah, just run up and down the court, shoot layups, try to make them, but if you miss them, get your own rebound, put it back up, and then run down the other side, run down the other end of the court, and just keep running the court, do pull-up jumpers, jump shots, whatever else, okay? But do something, makes it more fun, because a lot of people don't want to do, a lot of walking or hiking unless they're really into that, or running, jogging, or whatever. So make it enjoyable for yourself. See, I'm trying to give you ideas on how you can talk to the young people in your life to plant that seed, to let them know. It's just like, listen, if you get drafted and you can't get out of this country or whatever, you might want to be in shape, before. you actually get the draft notice, because your life's going to be even more miserable if you're out of shape, you know. Now, hopefully that does not happen and you can get out of the country, and I'll get into that. But I told my son, it's just like, listen, man, you got some tough decisions to make. And he's 25, okay? But I said, you know what? If I were you, if I were in your position, I would get a passport to at least give me the option of getting out of this country, okay? While you still can. That's me, okay? I would at least want to give myself that option. All right. Really pay attention to the news, really pay attention to what they're talking about as far as these military operations, where they're at, the deployments, um, what they're doing out there, you know, what, read between the lines kind of thing. Like, you call a bunch of general admirals in, and basically lay down the law, and saying, we don't want anybody with beards, we don't want anybody who are fat, we don't want this, we don't want that. There's your sign. That is your, that is the speech that they're telling you up front, that we're going to revamp this military. We're going to do something different here. And what they want is, they want the younger people. They want the younger people to replace the older people. Now, this is what I believe is going to happen. Okay? From my own experience and by understanding how the military works, at least worked. I haven't been in for a long time now. I got out in 2010, so it's been a long time when I got out of the reserve. But I understand the mindset overall, and I think this is what they're going to do. I think because the whole reason for the selective service is they pick from those kids first, whether male or female. And I think for the most part, they're going to choose male, uh, in the beginning anyway, if it comes down to it. And I think they'll probably do it in increments of 18 to 21 years old. Oh, but before I get too far ahead, my suggestion, if people are going to get a passport and leave the country, go to Switzerland for two reasons. One, Switzerland has always been neutral and probably will continue to stay neutral. Okay? I mean, people can pray about it if they decide to leave the country and where they're supposed to go, where the Lord leads them to go. But this is just my instincts here and from what I know. And two, I am aware of some things that are going to be, at least they are planning to be going down in Switzerland here in the very near future, where Switzerland would be a very nice place to live, you know, um, health wise, with some things that are, planning to go down there, that Switzerland actually cares about their people and they want them healthy. All right. Finland and Denmark may not be too bad either, but Switzerland would be probably number one. So just take that for what it's worth for people who are listening this long, okay? But getting back to the whole draft thing, I think they're going to do it in increments of the 18 to 21-year-olds first, maybe 17, but probably I'm thinking more 18 to 21-year-olds, because this is what they do. They categorize things, and it's usually within 3 years or so. There is an exception, and I'll get into that here and now. Then I think after that time, if they don't have enough of those or whatever else, if they have to continue to get more people, then they go to the 22 to 26 year old range. That's my guess. And the reason I say 25 instead of 26 is because in a military family, um, you can actually be considered, at least this used to be the law, and I think it still is, a military dependent up to age 26, living under your, whether your mom or your dad or both in the military or whatever, living under their roof, still getting military, um, you know, we'll just look at it this. Well, I'll just put it this way: still being a military dependent to getting those benefits. That's what I was looking for. Up to age 26, if you're in college, I believe it is. You might just have to be working, but I think you have to be a college student. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, up to age 26, you could still get military benefits living under your mom or dad's, roof if you're a college student, maybe even actively working or whatever. So my guess would be 18 to 21, then the 22 to 26 year olds. And then after that, I'll get into this in a minute, and I don't think it'll matter whether anybody's a transgender or what they identify as or what they believe they are. I think what they'll look at is what you were born as. If it says you were born a male, then on your birth certificate, then you're a male. If it says you were born a female, then you're a female. And I don't think there'll be a draft for females immediately, because it appears to me in Kegsess military, uh, Keg's breaths military, where they want to call them. That was a big hint when they changed everything from the Department of Defense to the Secretary of War, the Secretary, the Department of War. That was a big hint right there. Big hint on where we're headed to. But it appears that in his military, he doesn't want women. It also appears that he doesn't want minorities. Okay? Now, this is why I say that. When he says things like no beardos, and if you want beards, join the special forces or whatever, let me tell you something, okay, regarding that. African Americans, okay, they have something that a lot of young men in the military deal with, and I dealt with in treating African American men when I was a hospital corpsman for something that was called PFS. Paul, Frank, Sam, whatever. Okay, uh, it stands for pseudo folliculitis syndrome, and what it means basically is when, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but with black men, African American men, when they would shave, they would get really bad shave bumps on their face or neck. And what would happen is the follicles, would get inflamed. That's what the folliculitis is, inflammation of the follicles, you know, when they would shave, and they would have these really bad shave bumps, so they couldn't shave over it. They cut their face or their neck open. Okay, very painful, very irritating for them. So they would allow them to grow out beards for a certain period of time, and we would give them, a no shave chit, it was called CHIT, where they would not have to shave for a certain period of time. And we prescribed this cream that would try to help them, this lotion or cream or whatever, with the irritation on their face or neck, but it was only supposed to be temporary. But if they never got better, they could literally get a medical discharge for PFS, because the military would not allow you to not continue to grow a beard. And the main reasoning for that is you can't get a good seal on a gas mask if you have a beard. That was always the reasoning behind it. But it's also more professional looking, and just more, hygienic and all the rest of this stuff, I guess I would say, just looks more like more of a military bearing or what have you, better in uniform and all the rest of that jazz, keeping up appearances. But anyway, a lot of guys would get discharged for that reason. And I don't think anything's changed, because there are certain things that certain minority groups, certain people with certain skin colors, nationalities are more prone to than others, like sickle cell anemia for the African American community, as well as this whole thing with the PFS, where they could literally be discharged. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're getting rid of minorities, because I think these people are Nazis and communists, like I said before, and I'm not going to apologize for that. That is what that is what the fruit shows me. That is what they appear to be to me, Nazis and communists. Okay, so they don't want minorities and they don't want women. Okay, well, that might be a good thing for women, that would, that they might want to draft later on down the road or whatever, but at the same time, women don't have the option of possibly joining the way that men would. That's just what I see. People can agree or disagree. You could think I'm off my rocker or whatever. This is just my observation, okay? Listening to what these people are saying and then seeing their actions, that's what it appears to me. They want a draft, but they only want a draft of young, um, physically fit men. They would probably prefer them from the ages of 18 to 26. However, however, under this new military that I think they're trying to create, you got to have somebody to lead these young men. So where do you get those guys from? Well, if you have the staff NCOs and staff officers or whatever, and they want to continue to stay in the military, maybe they're not ready to retire yet, maybe they're on board with this whole thing, but it appears to me that a lot aren't. And they're questioning their orders. They're questioning the legality, the morality, and and whether what the orders that they're being told to follow are even ethical. People are beginning to, look within themselves and say, am I doing the right thing here? Maybe they're even thinking, am I going to be judged for this one day? Yes. you know, I mean, they're having questions. They're questioning this. They're not just a bunch of, you know, automaton robots. They are literally questioning, you know, is this right? And what I'm doing, is it right? you know so they don't want that. They don't want people questioning anything, so you get more young impressionable people. And then the staff NCOs or officers that are still on board, cool, they get to stay in. They get promoted, maybe they get to retire one day, maybe not, whatever else. But what if, just spitballing here, but what if they begin to say, no, I'm out, I'm done with this, I don't want to deal with this anymore. This is my thought on that. You get the people that had prior military service, whether they're retired or just simply got out, and you draft them and you bring them back in. And my guess would be is they would probably bring them back in up to around age 55, maybe older, especially if they had um, if they were combat veterans, if they were actually in war previously, whatever campaign it was. They call them campaigns, whatever theater of war, whatever campaign it was. I think that would be a desperate move, and I think it would be a last move, but it might be a necessary move. And I think it's a possibility. So even people like my age or younger, or maybe even a little older, you might want to start thinking about your physical fitness as well. Working on your cardio fitness, and just staying fit as possible. I think this would be, if this were to happen, it would be way, way down the road. I think it would be a last ditch effort attempt. I don't expect to get any kind of letter in the mail anytime real soon or anything saying, guess what, you're going back into the military, And who knows if you get to choose your branch of service or not. That's the other thing about a draft. Maybe they allow you to choose your branch of service, maybe they don't. I don't know. It's probably the needs of the military, the needs of, you know, whatever the Department of War decides or whatever. So, a lot of things to consider here, a lot of things to think about regarding this possibility of a draft. I would even say probability in the near future here. Uh, Definitely something to talk to young people about, to plant that seed in their head, you know, and to encourage them. It's just like, okay, if you can afford it, you might want to get a passport, unless you want to fight a banker, elitist, globalist, Kabbalist, satanic, Satanist war. You know, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. This is where we are in Mystery Babylon now. This is what they're doing. We don't declare war. Like I said, we just go to war. We just attack. We just send people out, send troops out, or whatever else, and then call it, I don't know, protecting the homeland, blowing boats out of the water or whatever. And it's just like, and Bobby Jones brings this up in his video, Commander Bobby Jones, and I've mentioned it before. I think I've mentioned it in videos, but I know I've mentioned it talking to other people about it, and it's been in my own mind. It's like, isn't that what the Coast Guard is for? That's what the Coast Guard is for. Coast Guard. They they don't attack. But they basically use interdiction techniques. Tactics. And they board ships and they search ships and they arrest people. They're a law enforcement agency. The Coast Guard. That's what they're supposed to be for. But the regime always brags about, we didn't put any of our men or women in harm's way and this and that and that. Guess what? If you join the military, you are in harm's way. You're supposed to be in harm's way. That's you choose that. When you sign the document, when you take the oath, you're in harm's way. You know, I mean, I didn't think that either when I first joined until they actually sent my butt overseas into war. Okay. I remember them talking about if the balloon ever goes up, if you're ever in war, and I'm like, oh, come on, man, give me a break, And then it happened in 1990. It happened, and and then in late 1990 into 1991, I was in the desert, for Shield and Storm, Operation Desert Shield and Storm. So it's just like, so it don't tell me it can't happen or won't happen, but at the same time, because it is happening, but at the same time, that's what the Coast Guard is for, you know. So, but we don't use the Coast Guard. We just blow ships out of the blow boats out of the water, and call that defending the homeland to keep from keeping the drugs in, and there's absolutely no evidence here. There's none. There's no investigation. There's no evidence. We just see boats and we blow them out of the water. They're in international waters and they're bringing drugs in. Really? How do you know that? Where's the intel? Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? It doesn't seem to matter. It does, and nobody seems to really care. But that's what the Coast Guard's for. If there's they're patrolling the waters and they're supposed to, if they need to board ships and search ships or whatever, and then you arrest people, and then uh, you do according to the rule of law. People are supposed to have due process, and you're supposed to, there's supposed to be some humanity here, and there's procedures to follow, but the Coast Guard seems to be irrelevant now. I know a little bit about this because I almost joined the Coast Guard when I went back into the reserve. The reason I didn't join the Coast Guard is because I would have lost my rank and I didn't want to start all over again. So I went back into the Navy Reserve because I was more familiar with that, and I was going to be able to keep my rank and then move up from there. I kind of would have had to start all over again the Coast Guard, but because the Coast Guard is I got into the military police, master at arms is what they call it in the Navy Reserve, but the Coast Guard is a law enforcement agency. I think it's under the Department of Homeland Security, I believe. So, um, you know, it's a little different. They're not a combat, a branch of service, but they are a law enforcement and rescue, obviously, you know. So that's what they do, So it's just like, why don't we use our Coast Guard? Well, I mean, what's their purpose out there? If there's nobody to rescue, then they're supposed to be, patrolling the waters, and you know, and keeping the drugs and guns or whatever else from coming in. But no, we just blow them out of the water. That's how we handle things now. We just blow people out of the water, call them narco terrorists, and then make it, you know, as they're a terrorist group, whether they are or are not. So they make it like a threat on the homeland where their military action can be taken. And it's like, and nobody sees the problem with this. Nobody sees this as an issue. So, anyway, so the videos that I plan to share later on in the Substack kind of covers some of these topics, but I just kind of wanted to suggest that people have those hard conversations with your children or grandchildren, the young people in your life, because I think there is a better than 50% chance that there's going to be a draft here in the near future. I'm not the only one talking about this. If people listen to the same channels I do, or you read the things I share, or whatever, it's being talked about in certain circles, where people are, you know, um, like I said, at least planting that seed that this possibility slash probability will occur. I said I think is a better 50% chance that they're going to go for like the 18 to 21 year olds first, and then the 22 to 26 year olds. And the reason I say the 18 to 21s first, the 18 to 21 year olds first, is because they're younger, possibly more fit, but they most likely registered with selective service, so it's going to be easier to find them, easier to get them. Your 22 to 26 year olds, a little older, maybe they registered, maybe they didn't. Still easy to find because everybody leaves a digital footprint, handprint, whatever else. Matter of fact, just found out, was it yesterday, the day before, whatever, that Texas and California, which I find it very intriguing, starting in 2026, you're going to have the digital ID to travel in and out, Texas, California, whatever. So just something to keep in mind. Texas, that's interesting. I thought Texas and Florida, like, were some of, like the last bastions of freedom kind of thing. No, not so much, I guess. And then I thought it was interesting, Texas and California, because in the movie The Civil War, I thought this was kind of interesting. Texas and California were actually on the same side of each other, which right now that doesn't seem to be the case. It seemed like they were total polar opposites. But in the movie Civil War, they actually fought on the same side together, if I recall correctly. I thought that was kind of interesting. So yeah, Texas and California, starting in 2026, you're going to have the digital ID, you know, for those two states. And I'm sure other states will follow very quickly. I've heard Utah, is going to be in there. And, so I don't know. But anyway, lots of stuff happening, lots of stuff going on, lots of things to be aware of. Like I said, I'll probably talk a whole lot more about this in my live stream in a few hours that I plan to do. But I got to get some more rest now. But yeah, I'm getting tired now, so I think I'll be able to sleep a little bit more. But you know, yeah, I've been up for a while. So, but anyway, those are just my thoughts on this whole thing. You know, um, it's uh, it's just getting really crazy out there, and I really think people should be prepared in every way. Spiritually, of course, first. You have to be. Your soul has to be prepared. Our souls have to be prepared for eternity first and foremost. But people cannot ignore their physical health. And when I've seen people do it, they're suffering, and they are paying a great, great price if they are ignoring things, that they are procrastinating and putting things off and not prioritizing correctly. You cannot ignore your physical health, especially if you're in your 20s. I know people in their 20s aren't listening to me, but you know, if you're the grandparents or grandparents of people in their late teens, early 20s or whatever, maybe even mid 20s to 30s, you might want to plant this seed. You might want to have a talk with people and say, listen, this regime does not care. The one thing I know for a fact is they do not care about us. They will scheme, manipulate, lie, even order the deaths, whatever it takes. People say, oh, that's going too far. Is it really? I don't think so. They will do whatever it takes to stay in power and control, even though control is an illusion. But they will do whatever it takes. They do not care about you, me, or anyone else. They only care about themselves, staying in power and control, protecting themselves, you know, from any kind of legal action, you know, and just constantly deceiving, manipulating, lying, scheming, whatever it is, to stay on top. And they don't care who has to be sacrificed. They don't care who has to, you know, um, who they step on, and who they, continue to step on to make sure that they stay on top and in control. And I totally believe that in my heart, 110%. And I don't think anybody will ever convince me otherwise of that. because I've been there, I've been around, I know how it works. I'm familiar with military operations. I'm familiar with what this country does. I'm aware of how evil and satanic we have become, and nobody seems to care. There's just nothing but lawlessness and chaos, and no rule of law, no due process. I've seen things now where it's like the Constitution has pretty much already been shredded. Most people don't care. They don't even know what the Bill of Rights are. They don't know what their true rights are. They don't know anything about the amendments. They have no clue. They do not care. And it's just like, so this dumpster fire regime and the dumpster will just run roughshod over everyone and anyone and this whole nation, and people will just sit back like fodder basically and do nothing. And when they do draft our children, our and grandchildren or whatever, that's exactly what these kids will be, cannon fodder. They will just be fodder. That's basically going to be their purpose. Fight the banker and the elites wars, you know, so these people can still stay on top. They can still get rich. They can still do their blood sacrifices, drink their adrenochrome, and whatever else they do, all their satanic rituals and everything else at the expense of our children and grandchildren. And those are the facts, Jack. That's a fact. Whether people agree with it, don't agree with it, you think I'm crazy, you think I'm nuts, off my rocker, whatever, all I can tell you to do is do your own homework and research, and you will find out that what I'm telling you is true. And they don't care, and they will sacrifice our kids and grandchildren. And that's why I told my son, get a passport, give yourself an option, so you can get out if you need to. Hopefully, maybe. But they might suspend visas and passports when it comes down to it. I know they're suspending visas to go to certain countries like Cuba. I know that for a fact because I heard about it earlier this morning, the Ignited Church live stream service. So um, I know that that's a fact that they're suspending visas. So anyway, that's it. I'm gonna try to get some more sleep. Y'all have a good morning. Take care, and once I get my live stream done, I'll post it. And I think I'll just post a link to my Substack if people are interested in looking at that. So I share a lot of things there that I won't share on YouTube. Some things are very, very offensive. Some things are funny. Some things are just interesting. But it's just a hodgepodge of stuff that I share on my Substack. So just me being me. All right, y'all take care. Have a good day. Be blessed. Bye bye.